The myth of the modern phenomenon. To understand the full scope of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, one must first dismantle the misconception that extraterrestrial encounters are merely a post-WW2 curiosity. While the famous 1947 crash at Roswell, New Mexico, permanently embedded the concept of flying saucers into modern pop culture, it also triggered a lasting wave of public skepticism regarding military cover-ups. Proponents argue that focusing exclusively on modern sightings obscures a much larger historical narrative, suggesting that these anomalous events have actually been recorded by humanity for thousands of years. Cosmic scale and statistical realities. The philosophical foundation of the ancient alien theory relies heavily on astrophysics and the sheer, humbling scale of the cosmos. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, contains over 100 dotted text billion-dollar stars, and astronomers estimate there are more than 100 text billion distinct galaxies across the observable universe. Given these immense numbers, proponents and open-minded scientists alike argue that assuming humanity is the sole intelligent civilization to emerge across 4.5 text billion years of planetary history is statistically improbable and fundamentally short-sighted. The enigma of global cranial deformation. When searching for physical evidence of ancient visitation, theorists frequently point to the shocking archaeological discoveries made at Cahuachi, Peru, in the early 20th century. Excavations unearthed human skulls featuring remarkably elongated, distorted craniums that looked strikingly non-human. While mainstream anthropologists immediately identified these artifacts as products of artificial cranial deformation, ancient astronaut enthusiasts proposed a more radical idea, that these individuals were either extraterrestrial beings themselves or hybrids possessing alien DNA. The cultural mechanics of skull binding. Historical and botanical expeditions, such as those conducted in the African Congo in the late 19th century, thoroughly documented the global practice of skull binding among tribes like the Mangbetu. Using tightly wrapped cords and boards on infants, various cultures successfully doubled the length of human skulls. Mainstream science views this as an artistic form of social stratification, used to distinguish the ruling elite or expand consciousness. However, alternative theorists look at these independent global traditions and conclude that ancient peoples were collectively trying to mimic the physical appearance of visiting cosmic entities. Egypt's Golden Age and the Star Gods. The narrative of extraterrestrial contact finds some of its most compelling imagery in ancient Egypt, a civilization deeply fixated on the heavens. Long before the construction of the Great Pyramids, Egyptian mythology celebrated an era known as Tep-Zepi, or the beginning of time, when sky deities supposedly descended to earth on flying boats. These entities, known as Neteru, were explicitly linked to specific celestial bodies, with the god Osiris directly associated with the constellation Orion and the goddess Isis tied to Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Akhenaten's radical monotheistic revolution. For nearly a millennium, Egypt's polytheistic religious system stood unchallenged, until the ascension of Pharaoh Akhenaten in 1352 BC. As the 10th ruler of the 18th dynasty, Akhenaten executed a sudden, sweeping religious purge, banning all traditional icons and forcing the empire to worship a single deity, the Aten, symbolized by a sun disk with radiating arms. According to ancient texts, Akhenaten claimed this massive cultural shift was dictated to him directly by a celestial being who descended from the heavens. The visual anomalies of Amarna art. Alongside his religious revolution, Akhenaten established a new capital city at Amarna and completely overturned traditional Egyptian artistic styles. While previous pharaohs demanded to be depicted as perfectly proportioned, broad-shouldered conquerors, Akhenaten ordered his artists to paint him with an elongated head, a narrow face, high cheekbones, a potbelly, and a sunken chest. Because his wife, Queen Nefertiti, and their children were depicted with identical physical distortions, theorists frequently speculate whether the royal family carried an exotic, non-human lineage. The disappearance and erasure of the heretic king. Akhenaten's controversial reign lasted only 17 years, ending in historical chaos and the swift abandonment of his capital city. Following his death, The temples dedicated to the Aten were systematically dismantled. Images of the pharaoh were deliberately defaced, and Egypt quickly returned to its traditional pantheon of gods. While historians view this total erasure as a political rejection of a failed heretical regime, ancient astronaut advocates wonder if it was a coordinated cover-up to hide a profound extraterrestrial connection. The Dogon tribe and the Sirius B paradox. The mystery deepens when tracing the migrations of African tribes, particularly the Dogon people of modern-day Mali. Believed to have fled Egypt during periods of intense religious persecution, the Dogon preserved an incredibly complex oral cosmological tradition. In the 1930s, Western anthropologists were stunned to discover that Dogon priests possessed intimate, centuries-old knowledge of a dense companion star orbiting Sirius, known today as Sirius B, an astronomical feature completely invisible to the naked human eye. Competing theories on tribal astronomy. To explain how an isolated culture could accurately track the circular orbit of an invisible star, modern critics suggest that the Dogon simply absorbed this data from modern Western travelers or creatively adapted their existing folklore. Ancient alien theorists strongly reject this explanation, noting that the Dogon's astronomical models and descriptive masks predate modern telescope observations by centuries. Instead, they favor the tribe's own oral history, that this advanced cosmic data was gifted to them by Nomo, a sky god who arrived in a roaring arc of fire, secret petroglyphs of the American Southwest. On the other side of the Atlantic, similar sky-centric traditions are carefully guarded by the Zuni Indians of New Mexico. Inhabiting the high desert plains for nearly 2 millennia, the Zuni possess an incredibly private repository of history, etched directly into canyon rock walls. Dating back to 1200 BC, these ancient petroglyphs feature highly unusual figures with domed heads, distinct visors, and disproportionate diamond-shaped bodies that closely resemble modern space travelers, rather than native wildlife or humans. Kachinas and the annual Shalako ritual. In Zuni theology, these cosmic protectors are known as Kachinas, supernatural sky people who originally guided the tribe to Earth through a mystical portal called the Sipapu. To this day, the Zuni preserve these vivid historical narratives through complex sacred oral chants and the annual Shalako festival. During this ceremony, dancers wear elaborate, rigid helmets and heavy suits to reenact the ancient arrival of their creators, leaving alternative researchers to view these elaborate costumes as traditional memories of ancient spacesuits. China's fire-breathing flying dragons. This pattern of heavenly visitation repeats across ancient Asian mythology, particularly within Chinese legends dating back to 3000 BC. The origins of the Han Chinese people center around the Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, whose miraculous birth was accompanied by a brilliant cosmic light from the star Qi. Celebrated as a cultural hero who introduced writing, acupuncture, and the compass, Huangdi was said to travel across his empire inside the belly of a fire-breathing dragon, a description that modern UFO theorists interpret as a primitive explanation for a mechanical, smoking rocket engine. The Anunnaki and Mesopotamian creation texts. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, offers an even more explicit description of non-human intervention. Discovered on clay tablets in 1849, these cuneiform texts describe a powerful race of sky beings known as the Anunnaki, a term translating to those who from the heavens came. Ancient astronaut theorists frequently highlight stone reliefs depicting these figures floating above regular citizens while sporting strange helmets, technical wristwatches, and wings, interpreting them as literal historical records of ancient space travelers. Demigods and the plurality of Scripture. The theme of powerful sky beings interacting and crossbreeding with early humans is a core element found across major world religions and classical mythologies. From Zeus descending from Mount Olympus, to father exceptionally gifted demigods like Hercules, to biblical passages in Genesis describing the Nephilim marrying human women, early literatures consistently describe superhuman interventions. Proponents even point to the grammatical use of plural pronouns in ancient Hebrew and Arabic scriptures, such as "let us make man in our image," as hidden evidence of multiple creators. The astrophysics of panspermia. To ground these ancient narratives in modern science, Alternative theorists frequently reference the biological concept of panspermia. This mainstream scientific hypothesis suggests that the basic chemical building blocks of life are distributed throughout the universe via comets and space debris. The discovery of organic, carbonate globules inside the Martian meteorite ALH 84001 in Antarctica proved that microbial life could theoretically cross-contaminate planets, providing a plausible mechanism for how life on Earth might have originated far out among the stars. Directed panspermia and genetic manipulation. Taking this concept a step further, Nobel Prize-winning geneticist Francis Crick proposed the theory of directed panspermia, suggesting that life may have been intentionally sent to Earth inside an unmanned craft by an advanced civilization facing planetary destruction. Theorists expand on Crick's work by looking at unique human genetic structures, like the HAR1 region responsible for rapid brain development, or unmapped junk DNA. They hypothesize that these biological anomalies are the result of targeted genetic mutations performed by ancient visitors, essentially using human code as an enduring storage medium, bending space-time and the future of human origin. Ultimately, the massive logistical challenge of interstellar travel remains the primary obstacle for both mainstream science and alternative historians, given that our fastest modern rockets would take 70,000 years to reach the nearest star. To overcome this limitation, physicists study theoretical Einsteinian shortcuts like time dilation and Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes, that can warp spacetime and make instantaneous cosmic travel possible. As modern researchers continue to look to the future for breakthroughs in physics, ancient astronaut theorists believe the answers are already written in our past, suggesting that early human civilization did not evolve out of thin air, but was intentionally sparked by travelers from the stars.